Okay, here we go. Welcome everyone to another episode of One by One and this special series connecting the dots with Riane Eisler and her special guests, recorded live at Hubcamp's campus studios in Vancouver. My name is Michael Kraus. As the host, I'm truly honored to support Riane Eisler and her many initiatives on partnership culture and consciousness, inviting us into this discussion that celebrates her legacy as global changemaker, especially in the context of so many upcoming activities that involve Riane and the evolutionary leaders community. Riane Eisler, scholar, systems scientist, and best-selling author of The Chalice and the Blade, The Real Wealth of Nations, and Nurturing Our Humanity. Riane has reshaped our understanding of history, economics, and power, introducing a transformational framework, the partnership system versus the domination system. Her work has been translated into over 30 languages, featured in classrooms and global forums alike, and has inspired movements for peace, gender equity, and social healing across the world. Welcome to the program, Riane Eisler. So honored to see you and be again in the beauty of your wisdom and your presence. And I'm really curious to learn if you could share with our audience the intention and vision of your upcoming Peace Begins at Home Summit in October, as well as your connection to our special guests today, Steve Farrell and Neale Donald Walsch.
Well, I'd be happy to do that, and I'm really happy to be here again. These two men that you're interviewing are amazing, both of them, and their joint project and really Humanity Rising, etc., are just as amazing. But I think that neither really needs an introduction. Neale has written so much about our relationship with what we call the spiritual, with God, if you will, no matter, whether it's the divine feminine, mother, father, that's an anthropomorphic view of what we call the divine. And he has questioned, really, as have people from all other, in medicine, in science, in history, we've all questioned assumptions, haven't we? And he has had the courage, hasn't he, to challenge assumptions. So it's just an honor and a pleasure to have him on this program. And also, of course, Steve Farrell. He has done so much with his background as an entrepreneur to become really a spiritual entrepreneur. And he has a new book coming out now, really helping us accelerate what I call the shift from domination to partnership, a shift that recognizes our interconnection, which, of course, even the Nobel Prize for Physics went to two physicists recently, whose work on entanglement at the subatomic level, interconnection at the subatomic level, was challenged by these men and was shown to actually exist. So we're questioning all kinds of assumptions, aren't we? And these two guys are questioning lots of assumptions, and they are living proof that enlightened men who don't really adhere to the old masculine, quote unquote, domination definition of being dominators and violent, these two men who are so committed to our oneness and to accelerating this shift to partnership, which is all about oneness. I'm deeply honored to have them both on this program. And I thank you so much, Michael, for your wonderful interview that I know our listeners and watchers will really, really enjoy.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Riane, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful for your initiatives and also for hosting the Peace Begins at Home Summit in October.
Oh,
And do you want to talk a little bit about it?
yes, I forgot all about
Oh,
that in my
okay.
enthusiasm for our two guests. Well, we're
You
having a
maybe
wonderful.
you got bedazzled by those two beautiful beings.
Yes, I was bedazzled. Well, uh, we are, we being the Center for Partnership Systems, and lots of other co-sponsors are having a virtual summit called Peace Begins at Home in very shortly on October 29 with speakers from, well, 17 nations and still counting because we don't have the program. I know we should, but we don't have it completely firmed up yet. Um, it is so important for us to think in whole systems terms and connect the dots and realize that violence in the home spills out, ripples out into social violence, into normalizing violence before our brains, really, as children, are fully formed. Just think about that. It normalizes violence, and yet we have not been able to connect the dots, and the summit does. So I look forward to seeing you all there.
Thank,
Bye-bye.
thank you, Riane, and thank you for inviting our special guests again, Steve Farrell and Neale Donald Walsh, and many, many, many blessings to you, Riane Eisler. Thank you.
Thank you.
Today we come together with a new vision for humanity, to co-create a united Earth family. And with this vision and our shared intuition, we have the potential to bring peace on Earth to fruition. We imagine a world where we take care of all of life. And with this intention, we become beacons of light. So let's join together in manifestation to bring about societal transformation. From the heart of humanity, we come together in unity to co-create a united Earth family. From the heart of humanity, we come together in unity to co-create a united Earth family. From the heart of humanity, we come together to co-create. Let's come together, family. From the heart of humanity, we come together to co-create. Let's come together, family.
And now let me welcome Steve Farrell and Neale Donald Walsh, two extraordinary souls, global visionaries, and change makers to the program. Steve Farrell is co-founder and worldwide executive director of Humanity's Team, a nonprofit organization based in Boulder, Colorado. The organization is focused on helping people through the world awaken to their deeper self and the interconnectedness of everything in the universe. Humanity's team presently has approximately 700,000 friends in over 150 countries. Some of their projects include industry-leading transformational education programs, Global Oneness Day, a day that Humanity's team created following its visit to the United Nations in May 2010, a Oneness Declaration, a Spiritual Leadership Award, a Conscious Business Declaration, and Conscious Business Change Agent program. Humanity's Stream, community circle, prayer, meditation, and study programs, and a variety of other services projects focused on supporting the environment and helping people all over the world. In the 1990s, years before Steve became involved with Humanity's team, he co-founded and led two high-growth technology companies based in Silicon Valley that were featured in the INC 500 and spanned the United States and Europe. During this period of his life, he was an officer in the Young Entrepreneurs Organization and the Young Presidents Organization. By all accounts, Steve was living the good life. But when he felt a calling to play an active role in creating a conscious movement that could help people across the globe connect more deeply within the divine truth of oneness and also consciously participating in creating a flourishing and awakening world, Steve followed his heart and left the American dream behind. Neale Walsch is a modern-day spiritual messenger whose words continue to touch the world in profound ways. He spent the majority of his early life thriving professionally, yet searching for spiritual meaning. His experience in that his deeply earnest yearning ultimately led him to experience a direct connection with God. A series of handwritten dialogues emerged from that connection, ultimately being sent to a publisher out of Neale's desire to prove to himself that his experience was real. He had been told in the dialogue, this will one day become a book, and he wanted to test the prediction. True to the declaration, the dialogue was accepted for publication and became the now famous Conversations with God series. The book has redefined God and shifted spiritual paradigms around the globe, having been translated into 37 languages, touching millions and inspiring important changes in their day-to-day lives. Continuing to share what he understands himself to have received through divine inspiration, Neale has gone on to produce 28 books on spirituality and its practical applications in everyday life. 7 of these titles reached the New York Times best-selling list. Recent works include When Everything Changes, Change Everything, a melding of modern-day psychology and contemporary spirituality, and The Only Thing That Matters, a precise description of what Neale believes to be the sacred journey upon which every human soul embarks. And so with this, I am honored to have both of you with us here today. And what an incredible, incredible dedication towards humanity, towards the greater understanding of the reality of oneness and your many, many accomplishments. And I'm deeply, deeply grateful to be sharing this time with you, Neale and Steve.
Hey, thank you for that incredibly generous introduction there, Michael. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Well,
thank you, Michael. Those are very kind words. Thank you.
I think you both earned it. So thank you for that. So maybe Steve, let me ask you, or let me start with you. I'd love for you to perhaps share about your journey, and in particular, what was that pivotal moment within your life when you decided to dedicate yourself and your life to the service of others, and on a mission to bring a greater understanding of our interconnectedness and the reality of oneness as a guiding principle forward. What was that? What did that look like for you? What was that?
So Michael, it was really two things for me. This is the 1990s when I was in Silicon Valley, and I was just really in the right place at the right time, where these companies were that were tied to the internet were growing like crazy. But so there were two things that happened to me there in the 90s that called me in an entirely different direction. So one was um, what I'm going to call an all hands on deck time that I could feel, which you could certainly feel today as we're dismantling climate science with the division that we're experiencing, the ecosystem crisis. I won't go on. All we need to do is look out the window to see these massive challenges. Candidly, these challenges were there in the 90s. When I was sitting there in my headquarters building in San Jose, in this second startup called Netigy, looking out my window, I still remember the moment where I was thinking, I'm sitting here in this luxurious building, and there's this other building next to us that's ours, and these are our headquarters buildings. And I'm thinking, was this the role that I was to play? With everything going on in today's world, was this the role that I was to play? And this is the question, incidentally, that Neale and I ask everybody everywhere today. There's a moment that is, I'll call it all hands on deck time, where if we're on a boat, it's no longer about the sunscreen. When the boat is in trouble, when we're in a house and it's on fire, it's no longer about listening to some music and reading a book, right? It's all hands on deck. It's like, this is a challenging moment. We need to pull together here. So this was one of the things that was going on there in the 90s that caused me to leave Silicon Valley. The other was Neale's book, One, that came out in 1995. Conversations with God, Book One, mid 1995. And Conversations with God, Book One, the God of my understanding spoke to me in that book that, of course, is non-dual, that's loving, that's beautiful, that's guiding, that's supporting, that is inviting people to wake up, to who we are and why we're here. And that sharing, you're never alone. There's no such thing as separation, right? Which, incidentally, scientists are sharing is true today, right? With their quantum physics in particular, that we are all one. That yes, we can look into the sky as I did in my Catholic Church days to find the God of our understanding, but we don't have to look up into the sky. We can simply quiet ourselves and just go within, and we'll find her right there. She's right there. There's no separation. And of course, this is in humanities team, we call this living consciously, where we understand that and we start living into that and embodying that. And then, like right now, as you look out in the world at each other and out your window, it's an entirely different experience where everything is sacred. The divine is omnipresent in each of you, this table, the planet, everything. And that's just we're going to live our lives in an entirely different way where we understand that and live into that. So I'll just leave it with that.
Well, thank you, Steve, for sharing, and how beautiful to hear that you were inspired by Neale's book and by his work. And you also mentioned all hands on deck, and so how can we inspire each other to actually bring our hands all on deck? And so, Neale, I wanted to ask you, what was that moment for you when you realized you had that conversation with God, and that there was this divine connection flowing through you and throwing back at God, and can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Michael. I had a pretty calm, cool, and collected life, so to speak, in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. I was a broadcast professional. I wound up with a nationally syndicated radio talk show. And then when I left the broadcasting business, because I really wanted to get into journalism, I found a job at a local daily newspaper. Ultimately, I became an editor, and then later on, I became actually managing editor of a weekly newspaper in that same community. My point being, I really was actively involved in my professional life as a member of the media. But then everything fell apart in the same 10-day period, Michael. I had an incredible 10 days in my life. What happened was my wife, still a very close friend of mine, but no longer married to me, my wife and I decided that we were going to go our separate ways. We were going to part, and get a divorce. And it wasn't acrimonious. We both just kind of gently agreed that it wasn't working out, the way we had hoped it would. So we agreed to go our separate ways and to co-parent our children, which we did. So I've left the house and found a little apartment someplace and began to live by myself and see the children in visitation. But 5 days after I left the house, I lost my job. The corporation that I was working for decided that they needed to downsize. And I was the most recent hire, so I was the first fired because the seniority rules dictated that last in are then first out. So, and my boss wrote me a wonderful letter of recommendation. He said, we didn't allow this person to escape from us. We didn't let him go because he wasn't doing a good job. In fact, he was doing an exceptional job. But our seniority rules required that we let him go as the first person when our corporation needed to downsize and to lower its overhead. So now, within the same 5-day period, I lost my relationship and lost my job. But wait, Michael, the world wasn't done with me yet. I'm on my way to another job interview. I had gone to several, and I'm on my way to a job interview, and an elderly gentleman turned his car in front of me. He made a left turn in front of my car, and he misjudged the distance between our two cars and smashed into the driver's side of my car. My car was totaled. I mean, it wasn't just a little fender bender. My car was totally crushed and totaled. And I suffered a broken neck in the accident. And it wasn't a hairline fracture. I suffered a 3/4 inch of Walsch fracture of the 7th cervical vertebrae posteriorly. I remember the wording exactly of the exam. That's a 3/4 inch break in your neck is large enough to put a pencil through. And when I woke up in the emergency room, the doctor said, "You know what? You've been given an incredible gift. You shouldn't be alive. People who suffer that much of a break in their neck generally die on the spot because of spinal cord complications. And if they don't die, the few who do not pass away wind up being paralyzed from the neck down. Mr. Walsh, you have suffered neither consequence. So what are you going to do with the rest of your life?" So Steve and I faced the same kind of moment. We came to that moment in an entirely different way, but the moment was identical. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? Do I want to get back into the radio business? Do I want to get back into the newspaper business? And do I want to be a member of the professional media? What is this really all about? So now here's what was funny, Michael. No one would hire me. They gave me what they call a Philadelphia collar. It's a plastic collar that you wear. And the doctor said to me, "You're not to take this collar off for any reason until we tell you." It might be a year, maybe, 10 or 12 months before your neck heals, because they wanted my neck to heal naturally and not get in there and do an operation if they could get away with it. I said, "Okay, I would prefer that. So let's do that." So I'm wearing this collar, but Michael, no one would hire me. I went to 7 or 8 job interviews, and finally, the 7th man who interviewed me finally was honest with me. He said, "Mr. Walsh, you've got all the qualifications for the job that we have open here, but we can't put you on the staff while you're wearing that therapeutic device. Obviously, you're not in a wholly healed position. You're not completely healed. One wrong move on the job, and we're paying your hospital bills, your medical bills for the next 15 years. We can't afford to hire. You come here when that thing is off your neck and you're whole again, we'd hire you in 30 seconds. You couldn't get a job, Michael. I wound up losing my apartment. I ran through all of my money savings were gone, and I wound up living on the sidewalk. I had no place else to go. I lived on the street for a year of my life, 2 weeks shy of 1 year to be exact. I was counting the days, so I know. And it was an interesting experience because, I'd wake up in the morning and not even know if I had a nickel to my name. I didn't know when I woke up if I was going to eat that day. I went from person to person with my hand out, asking if, the people I met could spare maybe a few coins or perhaps $1 or $2, or maybe even some folding money. And most days I managed to collect enough to, go to a fast food place and grab a little food. But that's the way I lived for a year, Michael. And you want to know what's the most interesting part about living on the sidewalk for a year? Where do you use the bathroom? Where do you relieve yourself? You go off and try to find some place in the woods. I mean, talk about losing your dignity completely, having to beg for quarters and nickels and dimes to eat, and having to find a place to relieve yourself off in the woods, or maybe sneak into a restaurant. And I would go into a restaurant hoping that I could just slip into the men's room. But inevitably, the manager of the restaurant would find me, take a look at me. My hair was down to the middle of my back. Of course, I couldn't afford a haircut, naturally. I'm wearing the same clothes that he saw the last 4 times I walked in there. I smelled to high heaven. I haven't had a shower in forever. I'm living on the sidewalk. So the manager would come to me and say, no. We don't want anybody panhandling the guests. Please don't come in here. Don't make me call the police. And I had to beg to just use the bathroom. I made a deal with the guy. I said, I'll make you a deal. On my word of honor, I promise you, I won't ask anybody for a nickel. And I just use the toilet for 5 minutes and have a little dignity left. And he said, okay, you can come in here whenever you want if you keep your word. That's when I decided, when I finally got off the sidewalk. I did get a little part-time job somewhere. I got a little weekend fill-in position, part-time job, just enough to afford a little studio apartment, a wide open flat. And I lived in that flat for a bit. I was in there for about 2 or 3 months. And I woke up one morning and I had what I call a Steve Farrell experience. And I asked myself, is this who I am? Why is this happening to me? And what am I supposed to be doing? I've got some talent. I have a few gifts. I have something to offer the world. Why is this happening to me? And I actually, Michael, there was a yellow legal pad on the coffee table in front of me. And I actually wrote an angry letter to God. It was just a form of self-therapy. I don't know what I thought I was doing, but I was just getting my feelings out. So I'm writing, Dear God, what does it take to make life work? What have I done to deserve continuing struggle? And I can remember saying to God in this letter, tell me the rules. I'll play this game called life. Just tell me the rules. How does it work? And that's when I heard a voice in my mind saying, Neale, do you really want answers to all of these questions? Or are you just venting? I said to God, you think I am? Yeah, I'm venting all right. But if you've got answers, I'd sure as heck like to know what they are. And the voice said to me, okay, take down everything that I'm saying. And this wonderful voice, I call it a voiceless voice because it didn't have any particular characteristic. It wasn't male or female or young or old. It's kind of like the sound of one's own thoughts, except that it was a voiceless voice. And I was clear it was not the sound of my own thoughts because I was being told things that I never, ever, ever thought in my life and that contradicted everything I was told about who and what God is, what life is about, and who and what we are. So everything that I was being told was the opposite of what I thought I understood about all of this. But I kept on writing and I kept on writing and I kept on writing. And I'm sorry I have to go into a 2.5-hour story here. I only have 2 more hours left. But at some point in the early part of the dialogue, I was told, Neale, you will make of this one day a book, and it will be accessed by many people. I wasn't sitting down trying to write a book. It never even occurred to me. I was having a private, sacred experience. But when I was told it would become a book, I thought, now I gotcha. Nobody's going to publish a book because a guy claims to be talking to God. There's not a publisher in the country who's going to put that book out. So I sent the handwritten notes. I had them Xeroxed. I went to a copy place, had the notes Xeroxed, and sent them off to a couple of publishers on the East Coast of the United States. And by golly, Michael, 2.5 weeks later, one of those publishers called me and said, we want to put your book out. I said, you're kidding me. You're going to publish this book? My notes? Yeah, they said, yes, it's a great work of fiction. I said, wait a minute. This is not a work of fiction. And the publisher said to me, Mr. Walsch, are you trying to tell me you think this actually happened to you? I said, yes, that was why I sent it to you, because this is my actual experience. He said, well, okay. We'll still put it out. We'll put it out as a nonfiction book, but it's not going to find 500 readers because nobody's going to rush out to buy a book because some guy up in Oregon claims that God is talking to him. So, we might find 500 readers. And he was right. It didn't find 500 readers. It found 5 million. Not bragging, not boasting, just saying, this is what happened. Before I knew it, I was, in the midst of a wave. Apparently I caught a wave, and apparently the book that I titled Conversations with God found some people who were interested in what had occurred. That's when I called some people together at my house. I held a gathering in my home, and I put on the internet, if you have an interest in taking a closer look at all of this material and seeing where, if anywhere, we can go with it to take it out into the world in a bigger way, please join me. And a handful of people, there were maybe 7, maybe 10 or 8 or 9 people, came to my house. And they spent a day or two in my home. My wife and I were your hosts, and we gave them a couple of meals, and we sat around and talked. We just talked like we're talking right here, right now. We just had a normal conversation. Thank goodness one of those people in that room was the man whose picture is right next to me.
Oh.
Steve Farrell. Steve was in that room. And it was in that moment that we decided, you know what? Because I had a dream. I had a dream just before this meeting. And in my dream, I was being asked a question by the universe was asking me, okay, we have people on the left, people on the right. We have conservatives, we have liberals. We have rich people, we have poor people. We have gays, we have straights. We have men, we have women. We have all these people who are in separate groups, members of individual religions. By the way, there are 4,000 religions on the face of the earth right now. So all these people were in different groups. And the voice said to me in my mind, but who will be on humanity's team?
Mm.
And I came to that meeting with these 7 or 8 other people, and I placed that question in front of the room. Who will be on humanity's team? And Steve said, count me in. And he became this incredible executive director with all of his executive experience, with all of his management know-how. I didn't have any of that understanding. I had none of that know-how. I had no idea how to run a worldwide, how to run a global organization. But God provided just the right person who had the skills, the understanding, the wisdom, the clarity, the compassion, all the tools that one needs to cause to be real, to make real a global organization. So Humanity's Team exists today in just the way you described it, Michael, in your introduction, because of the work of Steve Farrell, who has dedicated his life to changing the world's idea about God, about us, and about what our future can be if we simply decide that we are all one.
Well, Wow, wow. And I don't have any clinics here right now. Um, and I feel into the beauty of both of your souls right now, and your tremendous, tremendous work and your dedication, and your friendship and your brotherhood, and what an example of coming together and being inspired and inspiring each other to make a change in the world. And I think for all of those who have perhaps heard the voice of God for the first time, when that happens, or feel the touch of God when that happens for the first time, there is no other choice than being in service to another human being and to all of humanity. So I just want to express again my deepest, deepest gratitude, and thank you for sharing. And let me I don't even know how to what other question I can ask. What are you working on right now, in terms of perhaps bringing that deeper understanding to even a greater audience, or making that, to me it's the principle of oneness and the principle of our interconnectedness is not a principle, it's a reality. And there's a quote that says, to believe and to understand are not diverse things, but the same things in different periods of growth. And so I believe that perhaps our opportunity or our challenge right now on this planet is to make us all understand that we are part of one living, breathing organism, and that we're all connected, and that we're all part of one. And so, what do you think needs to happen in the very near future, as we're looking onto this planet in peril, for us to get this message out there?
Well, I'm going to let Steve answer that question from the viewpoint of humanity's team. But my brief response would be, we simply need to decide as a species who we are, where we are, and why we are where we are. We need to make a fundamental decision. Am I this? Am I body? Am I my body? Am I mind? Is this who I am? Or am I something more than this? Is it possible, just possible, that I'm actually a spiritual entity having a body and having a mind? If that's true, and of course I believe that it is, I was told directly, but that's who we really are. If I really am a spiritual entity, then that answers the first question, who am I? The second question, where am I? I'm in the realm of the physical, as opposed to the realm of the spiritual or the realm of pure being, if you please. I'm in the realm of the physical. And the third question, why am I where I am? Because in the realm of the physical, there exists a contextual field that allows me to experience and to express who I am, not just to know myself conceptually as a spiritual entity, but to know myself experientially as a spiritual entity by demonstrating, by expressing, by sharing the essence of who I am with all those whose lives I touch. So my short answer to your question, Michael, is what we need is a shift of consciousness, a raising of our awareness about who we are, where we are, and why we are where we are. And then we address the fourth big question of life. What do we intend to do about that? Now, the ways to learn more about all of this and to come to a larger awareness and a deeper understanding, that's where Steve Farrell and the wonderful colleagues of his at Humanity's team come in. Steve?
Yeah, well, so I'm going to say the same thing, but I'm going to tell a little story as I talk about this. But I first want to share Neale from, we're now 23 years old, Humanity's team, from the June 2003 launch that Neale pulled together, just as he shared. And Neale's been with us every step of the way, with as speaker, as educator, as in so many ways, board member. So it's been two brothers kind of walking along here, caring for this thing called Humanity's team that's grown into what it is today. So the way I would frame this here, this today, where are we and what are we planning to do here to create this transformation? The First of all, one of the most important messages in Conversations with God that Neale shares all the time was people come to him, can you tell me what God would say about this or that and the other thing? And Neale says, why are you coming to me? Don't you understand the the key message of Conversations with God is that you are walking around with that God of our understanding, So, which is, it's true. That's the whole point of Conversations with God is that there is no separation, right? There is no separation. Now, so a couple of years ago, I was walking around in my kitchen, and this this term Galileo moment drops into my head, and it was just kind of like what Neale was bringing in with the books. If I knew this was one of those moments where I wasn't to bat away this term. I didn't know what the heck Galileo moment meant, but it came in a way that was like, Steve, you better go. If you don't know what Galileo moment means, you better go find out. So I did. I did. I knew a little. I remembered from school that in the 17th century there was an astronomer and Galileo and stuff, but I didn't really know much more than that. So what my research turned up is, of course, that this was the guy in the 1700s that there was already the research out that said that probably the Earth was not the center of the universe, but this had not been proven. We didn't have telescope verification and so on. And this is what Galileo brought in. He did the research as a physicist, as an astronomer, as a scientist that said the Earth was not the center of the universe at all. It's actually in a solar system. It's on the edge of a solar system, right? Now, we wouldn't have the world that we have today without that awareness. The satellite system, the security systems, the space systems, I could go on. None of it would be working if we thought the Earth was the center of the universe. So now,
Which, by the way, the Catholic Church taught. Excuse me for the interruption, but that was the official doctrine of the Catholic Church, which then condemned Galileo and put him under house arrest for the rest of his life.
Right, and he almost was killed, and the only reason he wasn't is he recounted, but it was too late, and the science was already out there. So one man then created this change in the world that was necessary, and he paid the price. He was under house arrest to the end of his life, and he almost lost his life. So now here we are today, where we are turning the telescopes inward. We're turning the telescopes inward, because this message that we are all one, mystics have shared down through the ages, as Conversations with God reveals. And science is now affirming this, right? Quantum physics is saying there's an entanglement. Yes, there's no physical connection. We can see that here. But it's saying don't just as Einstein shared, the greatest illusion in the world is the illusion of separation. Don't be walking around thinking that we're separate. We are not, right? Turn those telescopes inward, and what we see at a quantum level, which means with microscopes and things, is that everything is deeply connected. That in fact, there's one body. Our scientist friends are calling it cosmos and universe, and they're saying we're sovereign to this universe, which incidentally, they're saying the same thing Neale is saying. That we're sovereign to this one body, that we are all one. So, and the Nassim Haramein goes further and says, so when you look up at the sky and you see this body of the cosmos and universe, realize that it could not exist without you. Couldn't exist without you. You are a part of that one body. We are a part of this one, of the divine, that the universe and cosmos. We use the term the divine, and yeah, we use the terms cosmos and universe too, but the divine is really bringing more the fullness of what we're talking about, because the divine, then now we're talking about God. So We're part of the body of God. Okay. So that means that it is eternal life, as is revealed in conversations with God, that we are unbounded, all of these things. Right. And it's not just us, it's each person, it's everything, it's the universe itself, it's the planet that has a soul. Right. So as we turn those telescopes inward and as we understand that this oneness, this unity and oneness, which incidentally, spiritual literacy says there's an underlying unity and oneness. Spiritual literacy. So it's too bad in school we're taught math literacy, English literacy, writing literacy. We aren't taught spiritual literacy. Where you go through school and they say there is an underlying unity and oneness. You are a part of a larger body. That's the game-changing thing. And so where it's all hands on deck time, well, that just means if we're a healthy cell in the body, not a cancer cell, that we open our heart, we become in service. We can't do everything, but we're called to do something, And in our daily practice, we find out what that something is. My thing was to work alongside Neale here with Humanity's team and these messages. And Michael, look at your beautiful work that you were called to. You're creating this program where you're bringing people on and educating people and so on. So this is what's happening now. And here's the really good news that the news is not, that news organizations and the media are not reporting. This is unstoppable now. This will happen. One of the things that gave me courage was hearing the Moses story. Not that I'm not saying any of us are Moses or something, but he was asked to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, right? That story, right? And he said, I can't do that. When he was asked to do it, I can't do that. Lead him out into the desert and the Red Sea. And God said, oh, this is all in the Bible, by the way. And God said, oh, Moses, when did you decide that God was weak? And Moses said, oh, okay, well, if you're gonna put it like that, okay, here we go, right? So likewise, this is happening now. God's not weak. This awakening is happening. And we will get to our destiny. I know we will. And partly through programs like this, where we get to share these important things that we're sharing.
Thank you, Steve. And wow, there's so much that came through for me in terms of the listening, or the telescope facing inwards and the listening to it. And but it's also about listening. I feel where the real power and the real beauty is also expressed is seeing God in another person and seeing that connection to God or the divine or whatever name you want to put towards it being expressed through another person. And there is no higher honor, there is no greater celebration, there is no greater privilege to be in a space like we are right now, for me at least, that's my human experience, to be connected to you and knowing that this divine spark is flowing through you and me being able to see it. And that is such a point for celebration, because that's the highest, or at least again from my perspective, that is the highest accomplishment that we can achieve perhaps in our evolution as human beings. Besides having children, and I don't want to go there, but this connection, this clarity, this knowing, this understanding comes from a higher place and works its way through us. And that's what I'm experiencing right now from you. And last night, I don't want to go into it too deep, but I went to a concert and there was a couple playing music, and you would just be standing in front of them and just listening into the depth of their love for one another, but also to hear God playing through them was extraordinary. And so how often do we actually listen to what is going on, and how often do we actually recognize another person for that? And like you said with Moses, and I'm saying, well, if Moses would walk through the door tomorrow, maybe not in his outfit that we think he might look like, would we recognize him as Moses? Would we recognize him as the one who is going to lead us out of this peril? And the question might be for each and one of us: do we recognize each other? And so, having said that, we're coming towards an end of this episode, and I would love for you to come back at a future time, and for each and one of you, what do you think is the single most precious or potent or advice or practice in this day and age that you can share with people to step into this deeper understanding of our interconnectedness and the reality of oneness?
My answer to that question, Michael, would be short and very simple. The biggest problem in the world today is the fact that we are seeing more estrangement and more alienation between people of different races, different colors, different religions, different economic, as I mentioned earlier, different economic status. We're just seeing people alienating from each other. But we don't understand why. We don't understand what is causing this incredible alienation. So we see the outcome of the biggest problem in the world today, which is alienation. But we don't know what's causing it. And the answer to that question, Michael, from my point of view, is a single word: separation. Humanity has embraced, by and large, the idea that we're separate from everything. We're separate from each other. We're separate from the earth. We're separate, certainly, from God. We don't dare even announce that God and we are one, that God lives within us. People who say those kinds of things are like Galileo, what I call idea heroes. And most of the world's religions would call what I am saying now blasphemy. Many of the world's religions would call me a heretic and would call me an apostate, because I am suggesting to you that there is no such thing as separation. But there was a guy, interesting gentleman, walking the earth around 2,000 years ago, who made an interesting statement. He said, "You want to know how to make life work? Do unto others as you would have it done unto you." Because he understood there's nobody else in the room. There is only one of us, taking different shapes and different sizes, but we are all one. And if we decided to treat each other in that way, the world would change overnight.
Mm.
Well, first, let me say that, of course, what Neale is sharing is true. It's absolutely true. And so let me to add to that, it's challenging for me to see so many that don't understand this, that they're one with God and that they are loved beyond measure. And I could say loved 100 times here for emphasis. They are loved beyond measure. And they will experience that when they transition and we leave our body. They will experience that fully. But our work is to try and help people understand that and embrace that while they're here in a physical body, so they can live with that awareness. When they live with that awareness, and they're all thoughts about being worthy, about self-image, those problems go away. When you know yourself as a divine being, divinity itself, it's life-changing. So, and then we can do this work in the world that we're called to, that we naturally do, by the way, when we're a part of this larger body of God. Right? And we can, since we're here on the earth, we can call it part of this planet, part of the earth, where we open our heart, we go into service in our daily practice. We're called to the things that we're called to. We can't do everything, But when 8 billion people all are called to one thing, the thing that they are to do, then we have this sustainable and flourishing planet. So, and one of the things Neale and I got as a download years ago, even before Galileo moment, uh, was that that there would be in 2040 a tipping point, 800 million people, 8 to 10%, right? A tipping point in what we're calling conscious living, conscious of these things we're talking about, conscious of our oneness, that 800 million people would be living that way 15 years from now. So this is our work. And through programs like this and other programs, we get these messages out, inviting people, feel, know how loved you are. Know that you are a part of the body of God, that you are divinity itself. And then what is going to naturally happen without having to take a bunch of master classes or memorize anything, there's a natural unfolding where then you become an extension of the divine. It's
What
just what
Steve
happens
is,
naturally.
and what Steve mentioned here is that, in 15 years, we'll have reached a certain number that sociologists call critical mass. We will have reached critical mass in the number of people who are embracing the highest truth about who we are in relationship to everything else and in relationship to each other. And when we reach that point of critical mass in the next 15 years, the first domino will fall and the rest of the dominoes follow. And finally, the world will experience itself as it was intended to from the very beginning. A place of eternal love, joy, compassion, awareness, sensitivity, and happiness at every level. All we have to do is know that we are all one. It's really quite simple.
And I fully receive you and understand. And I'm working on a project outside of this podcast that might have the ability to accelerate reaching the tipping point. And my vision is that within the next 8 to 12 months, we're actually going to experience a shift in humanity. And I would like to have a conversation with you outside of this podcast. And it was a true blessing and a true honor for me to hear your wisdom and be in your presence. And I wish you nothing. I wish you nothing but the best, and on your continued journey in making this a better place. And many blessings to you. And is there anything, last word that you want to share with our audience before we part way for today?
Steve?
Yeah, just say, go and be who you are. That's what we're encouraging. And we're, and I think this audience knows who we are. So let's go and be who we are. This is not the end of a program. This is the beginning of stretching more fully into why we're here, why we were born into this life.
I guess my final message would be what God said to me in conversations with God. She said, Neale, your life is not about you. It's about everyone whose life you touch and the way in which you touch it. Because in the universal sense, when you live that way, you discover that life is about you for a very elegant reason. There's only one of us in the room.
Wow. And with that, thank you to our audience for tuning into this episode of One by One and this special series connecting the dots with Riane Eisler and her special guests today, Steve Farrell and Neale Walsch. And until next time, be kind to one another and take care of each other. Thank you for watching.